The city animal shelter was a symphony of barks and whines, a constant hum of hopeful anticipation and quiet despair. Yet, amidst the cacophony, one sound was conspicuously absent. Sergeant Rex. He was a magnificent German shepherd, a once decorated canine hero whose very name had once been synonymous with valor and unwavering loyalty. Now, he was a ghost, a shadow of his former self, confined to the quietest, most secluded kennel in the back. His coat, though still a rich sable and tan, seemed to have lost its luster, mirroring the emptiness in his eyes. Those eyes, once sharp and alert, tracking scents with military precision, now held a profound, inexplicable sadness. They stared out at nothing, reflecting a sorrow so deep it baffled the dedicated shelter staff. Sarah, the kind-hearted manager with an uncanny ability to connect with even the most troubled animals, spent hours by his side, whispering reassurances, offering treats, and trying every trick in her book. But Rex remained unresponsive, a silent, unmoving statue of grief. "It's like he's lost his soul," Sarah murmured to her assistant, Mark. One afternoon, watching Rex refuse even the finest cut of steak. "He's been here for months, and not a single flicker of hope. We know his history, a hero, decorated in combat, then just found wandering. No microchip, no tags, just that old K9 collar with his name etched inside. What could have broken him so completely?" Mark shook his head, a heavy sigh escaping him. "Combat trauma, maybe, but even the most scarred veterans eventually find some peace. This is different. It's like he's carrying a secret, a burden too heavy for even a dog as strong as Rex." They suspected a deeper trauma, something beyond the battlefield's chaos, a betrayal, perhaps a loss so profound it had shattered his very being. The mystery gnawed at them, a constant reminder of the majestic creature confined within the shell of despair. Sergeant Rex, the hero who had saved countless lives, now needed saving himself. But from what? And from whom? Only the haunted eyes of the once proud K9 held the answer, locked away behind a wall of impenetrable grief. Sarah and her dedicated team at the shelter were relentless in their efforts to coax Sergeant Rex out of his profound despair. They tried everything gourmet dog food artfully arranged, the finest squeaky toys tossed playfully into his kennel, even the gentle ministrations of a renowned animal behaviorist who specialized in PTSD and working dogs. Yet, Rex remained an unyielding fortress of sorrow. He'd barely touch his food. Toys lay forgotten, and the behaviorist, after weeks of patient attempts, finally admitted defeat. Shaking her head sadly as she noted his unprecedented level of detachment. He was a dog encased in glass, visible but unreachable. His vibrant spirit, once legendary, seemed to have been extinguished, leaving behind only the ghost of a magnificent K9. The silence that emanated from Rex's kennel was more deafening than any bark, a constant, heavy reminder of their failure to reach him. Sarah often found herself sitting by his enclosure during her lunch breaks, simply existing in his presence, hoping some unspoken empathy might bridge the chasm of his grief. She'd recount stories of other resilient animals, whisper tales of sunny fields and endless games of fetch. But Rex's eyes would remain fixed on some distant, invisible horizon, utterly devoid of recognition or interest. It was heartbreaking to witness the slow decay of such a noble creature. Then, one crisp autumn morning, a new volunteer walked through the shelter doors. Leo Maxwell was a man who seemed to blend into the background, unassuming and quiet. his movements deliberate and almost hesitant. He was of average height, with salt and pepper hair that hinted at years of experience, and eyes that held a certain weariness, but also a deep, untapped reservoir of kindness. He spoke little, filling out the volunteer forms efficiently, requesting to be assigned to the most challenging cases, the ones other volunteers often shied away from. Sarah, ever perceptive, noted the subtle lines around his eyes, the way his hands, though gentle, seemed calloused from years of manual labor, or perhaps something more rigorous. When she asked about his experience with animals, he simply said, "I've been around dogs my whole life, good with difficult ones." There was a quiet conviction in his voice that intrigued her. She decided to assign him to the general kennels first, observing his interactions, before considering him for any of the more sensitive cases. Leo proved to be an exceptional volunteer. He cleaned kennels with meticulous care, spoke to every dog in soft, soothing tones, and had an almost innate ability to calm the most anxious pups. He rarely sought attention, simply completing his tasks with quiet diligence. After a week, Sarah felt a growing sense of trust. "Leo," she said one afternoon, "we have a special case, a German Shepherd, a former K9. He's unresponsive. We call him Sergeant Rex. He needs someone with patience, someone who understands more than just basic obedience." Leo's head tilted slightly at the mention of K9. A flicker, almost imperceptible, crossed his weary eyes. "Sergeant Rex," he repeated, the name sounding foreign yet strangely familiar on his tongue. "I'll try." From that day forward, Leo Maxwell became a regular fixture outside Rex's kennel. He didn't try to lure him with toys or treats, nor did he attempt any forceful commands. Instead, he would simply sit on the cold concrete floor, a respectful distance from the bars, and speak. He spoke in a low, even tone, telling Rex about his day, about the quiet beauty of the autumn leaves outside, about the simple pleasure of a good cup of coffee. He shared mundane details, never demanding a response, simply offering his presence, a steady, unwavering anchor in Rex's turbulent world. "It's a strange approach," Mark commented to Sarah one morning, watching Leo read a dog training manual aloud to Rex, who remained perfectly still, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond the kennel wall. "He's not trying to force anything," Sarah observed. "He's just being there sometimes. That's all a truly broken soul needs. Not a cure, but a witness." Days turned into weeks. Leo's routine never wavered. Every afternoon, after finishing his general duties, he would find his spot by Rex's kennel. He'd talk about the weather, about the latest news, about the books he was reading. Sometimes, he would simply hum a quiet tune, a low, resonant melody that seemed to fill the small space. Rex, for his part, remained an enigma. He didn't recoil from Leo's presence, nor did he acknowledge it. His breathing remained shallow, his posture slumped, his eyes vacant. Yet, a subtle shift was occurring, almost imperceptible. The tension in the air around Rex, usually palpable, seemed to soften slightly when Leo was near. It was like a very faint, almost invisible thread was being woven between the man and the dog, strand by agonizing strand. One afternoon, Leo brought a worn, leather-bound book with him. It was a collection of short stories about courage and resilience. He began to read aloud, his voice a steady drone, filling the silent kennel. As he read, Rex, who had been lying with his head on his paws, slowly, almost imperceptibly, shifted his position. His ears, which had been perpetually flattened, twitched. A long, shuddering breath escaped him. the first genuine sound Sarah had heard from him in months. She was watching from a distance, her heart doing a little flutter of hope. Leo, oblivious to Sarah's observation, continued to read, his voice a soothing balm. He didn't press, didn't demand. He simply offered his quiet companionship, day after day, week after week. He felt an inexplicable pull towards Rex, a deep resonant empathy that he couldn't quite articulate. It was more than just pity for a neglected animal. It was a profound sense of connection, a feeling that they shared a similar burden, a quiet understanding of unspoken pain. Leo, a veteran himself, carried his own invisible scars, echoes of battles fought and comrades lost. Perhaps it was this shared experience of profound loss and quiet endurance that drew him to Rex. Sensing a kindred spirit in the dog's sorrow, he understood, on a fundamental level, that some wounds couldn't be healed with treats or toys, but only with patience, presence, and an unspoken acknowledgement of shared suffering. He never forced a touch, never reached into the kennel uninvited. His approach was one of quiet respect, a silent offering of friendship that asked for nothing in return. He saw the magnificent canine beneath the shell of despair, the hero that lay dormant, and he felt a primal urge to help bring him back. Every day, as he walked away from the shelter, a tiny spark of determination flickered within him. He wasn't sure what it was that connected him to Rex, but he knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that he couldn't give up on the dog. Not yet. Not ever. His own past, a landscape of fragmented memories and unaddressed trauma, resonated deeply with Rex's mysterious sorrow. Leo himself had walked through fire, both literal and metaphorical, and had emerged with pieces of his own soul scattered across distant lands. He recognized the look in Rex's eyes, the haunted desolation that spoke of unbearable loss and perhaps even betrayal. It was the look of a warrior who had fought and lost, not on the battlefield, but in the aftermath. When the smoke cleared and the true cost of conflict became apparent, Sarah, watching Leo's unwavering dedication, felt a flicker of hope she hadn't dared to entertain before. He's different, isn't he? She mused to Mark one evening as they locked up. Most people give up after a few days with Rex, but Leo, he just keeps coming back. He's got that quiet strength about him. Mark agreed. And Rex, I swear I saw his tail twitch just a little today when Leo was talking. Just a little. It was a small sign, almost too small to register. But in the desolate world of Sergeant Rex, it was a seismic shift, a minuscule crack in the impenetrable wall of his grief, hinting at the possibility of a breach. Leo, unaware of the ripple effect his quiet presence was having, continued his vigil. He believed, with an almost spiritual conviction, that somewhere beneath the layers of pain, the real Sergeant Rex was still there, waiting for something, or someone, to call him back from the abyss. And Leo was determined to be that call. The relentless monsoon rains had settled over the city, turning the shelter's usually bustling outdoor runs into muddy puddles and drumming a monotonous rhythm on the corrugated iron roof. It was one of those afternoons when the light was prematurely fading, casting long, somber shadows that deepened the sense of gloom inside the kennels. Sarah and Mark had finished their rounds early, huddling in the small office, sipping lukewarm coffee and discussing the dwindling adoption rates during the dreary weather. They debated whether to postpone some of the louder play sessions, mindful of the sensitive animals like Rex, for whom any sudden noise seemed to amplify his internal torment. Leo Maxwell, however, was undeterred by the weather. He arrived precisely at his usual time, a worn trench coat shedding rivulets of water onto the linoleum floor. After a quick greeting to Sarah, he moved directly towards Rex's isolated kennel, a quiet determination in his stride. The air around Rex usually felt heavy, stagnant, as if the very oxygen refused to enter his private world of sorrow. But today, something was subtly different as Leo approached the kennel, his hand reaching for the latch on the gate. Something extraordinary happened. Rex, who had been lying in his customary curled-up position, his head tucked beneath his paws, motionless as a statue for what felt like an eternity, suddenly lifted his head. His ears, which had remained stubbornly flattened against his skull since his arrival, twitched, not a lazy, absent-minded twitch, but a sharp, alert movement, as if he'd caught a scent or a sound. From a great distance, a low whine, barely audible at first, escaped him. It was a sound so unexpected, so utterly out of character for the silent, grieving canine that it made Leo pause, his hand frozen midair. He looked at Rex, truly looked, and for the first time, saw a spark of something beyond despair in those deep brown eyes. It was a flicker of recognition, a hesitant question, an agonizing hope. The whine escalated, growing in intensity, becoming a continuous guttural moan that clawed its way from Rex's chest. His body began to tremble, a deep, full-body tremor that shook the very foundations of his large frame. He pushed himself onto all fours, his powerful legs unsteady, struggling to maintain his balance. Then, impossibly, the moan transformed. It was no longer a whine, but a series of short, sharp, heart-wrenching sobs, loud, unmistakable, human-like sobs, tears, real, glistening tears, streamed from Rex's intelligent eyes, tracking paths through the fur on his muzzle. He pressed his massive head against the cold steel bars of the kennel, straining, desperately trying to reach Leo. His tail, which had been dormant for months, gave a single, tentative thump against the concrete floor, then another, faster, stronger, until it was thumping a frantic rhythm of desperate emotion. The sound, the sight, was utterly shocking. It ripped through the quiet shelter. Sarah, alerted by the sudden, guttural cries, rushed out of the office, Mark hot on her heels. They skidded to a halt a few feet from Rex's kennel, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had never, not once, heard such a sound from Rex. Not a bark, not a growl, only the agonizing silence of his grief. And now, this. "What in God's name?" Mark whispered, his voice laced with awe and confusion. Sarah could only stare, her hand clamped over her mouth. Rex was pressing harder against the bars, his entire body convulsing with each sob, his desperate gaze fixed solely on Leo. It was a raw, primal display of emotion, a desperate plea from a soul that had finally found something to respond to. Leo, equally shocked, felt a jolt of recognition course through him, sharp and immediate. It wasn't just the sheer intensity of Rex's reaction. It was something deeper, something visceral, a familiar sensation, like an old wound suddenly throbbing, flared in his left arm. He instinctively reached down, his fingers brushing against a thick, raised scar just below his elbow. It had been there for years, a relic from his military days, a memory he'd long since compartmentalized, buried beneath the layers of everyday life. But now, it wasn't just throbbing, it was burning, pulling him towards the frantic dog. He knelt slowly, instinctively, without thought, his eyes locked with Rex's tear-filled gaze. "Rex," he breathed. the name escaping his lips like a prayer. He didn't know why he said it, didn't understand the sudden, overwhelming sense of familiarity that washed over him. But the name, spoken aloud, seemed to hit Rex with the force of a physical blow. The dog's sobs intensified, a desperate, broken sound that echoed the very depths of his soul. His massive head continued to press against the bars, his wet nose inches from Leo's face, his eyes pleading. Sarah, recovering slightly from her initial shock, began to move forward cautiously. Leo, what's happening? Her voice was a strained whisper, filled with a mixture of fear and profound wonder. He's never reacted like this to anyone. Leo didn't answer. He was lost in the moment, in the raw, aching connection that had suddenly erupted between him and this broken creature. He reached through the bars, his hand moving slowly, deliberately, towards Rex's head. He expected the dog to flinch, to pull back, as he always had from human touch. Instead, Rex pushed into his hand, his head pressing harder, desperate for the contact. Leo's fingers tangled in the thick fur, feeling the warmth of the dog's skin beneath. He stroked gently, soothingly, along Rex's jawline, behind his ears. As Leo's touch connected, another jolt, even stronger than the first, ran through him. A torrent of fragmented images, long suppressed, began to flicker at the edges of his consciousness. Not just vague impressions, but sharp, distinct flashes. The blinding glare of desert sun on sand, the metallic tang of dust and gunpowder, the thunderous roar of an explosion, a frantic, desperate scramble through rubble, the heavy weight of a canine vest against his side, a low growl, fiercely protective, the chilling crack of a sniper rifle, the metallic scent of blood, a hand, strong and familiar, pulling him, dragging him, urging him forward, and then the face, a fleeting, shadowed glimpse of a face, not his own, but one he somehow knew intimately. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to make sense of the chaotic torrent of sensations. The scar on his arm pulsed with an almost unbearable intensity, each throb a painful reminder of a past he couldn't quite grasp. The same arm, the same area where Rex's muzzle was now pressed, frantically nuzzling. Rex continued to sob, but now, beneath the anguish, there was a new note, a hopeful, desperate plea for recognition. He whined, pushing his head into Leo's hand, then pulled back, nudging Leo's arm with his nose, specifically the area where the scar was. He repeated the action, again and again, as if trying to communicate something vital, something only Leo could understand. Leo opened his eyes, staring at the persistent dog. He looked at the scar, then back at Rex's pleading gaze, and a single, stunning word formed on his lips, a whisper torn from the depths of a forgotten past. "Bravo!" The instant the word left his mouth, a profound silence descended upon the kennel. Rex stopped sobbing. His tail stopped thumping. His head lifted, his ears swiveled forward, and his tear-filled eyes locked onto Leo's with an intensity that took Leo's breath away. There was no more anguish, no more despair, only a pure, undeniable, unadulterated joy. A whimper, soft and full of relief, escaped him. He licked Leo's hand, then his face, then his hand again. A frantic, desperate effort to bridge the remaining distance. Bravo! It was his canine partner's call sign, a name he hadn't thought of, hadn't dared to remember in years, a name associated with the most traumatic, fragmented memories of his military service. The memories were still hazy, obscured by the fog of a severe head injury and a medically induced coma. He remembered waking up in a field hospital, disoriented, with medics telling him he'd been found alone, separated from his unit. He'd asked about Bravo, his K9, his partner, his protector. They had shaken their heads, their faces grim. No sign, soldier, he didn't make it. But here he was, right here, Sergeant Rex, Bravo. The full weight of the realization hit Leo with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just a dog crying. This was his dog, his partner, the K9 he'd believed was dead, the K9 he had unwittingly, agonizingly, abandoned. The tears that now streamed down Rex's face were not just tears of sorrow, but tears of recognition, of an agonizingly long-awaited reunion. And the tears that now welled in Leo's own eyes were tears of overwhelming shock, of guilt, and of a fragile, impossible hope. Sarah and Mark stood frozen, witnessing the incredible scene. They didn't understand the words bravo, but they understood the visceral, raw emotion that filled the air. They understood that the impenetrable wall around Sergeant Rex had just crumbled, shattered by a single word and a man's touch. What had just transpired between Leo Maxwell and Sergeant Rex was far more than a simple encounter between a volunteer and a shelter dog. It was a reunion, a resurrection, a miracle, and it stunned everyone. The air in the shelter's back kennel was thick with unspoken emotion. Sarah and Mark watched in stunned silence as Leo knelt, his face a canvas of disbelief, recognition, and a dawning, terrible understanding. Rex, no longer sobbing, was now frantically licking Leo's face, his tail a blur of joyous, desperate thumps against the concrete. His body language had undergone a seismic shift, transforming from withdrawn despair to an almost frantic, unrestrained adoration. The transformation was so profound, so instantaneous. It was almost frightening. "Bravo," Leo whispered again, his voice cracking with a mixture of awe and profound guilt. He pulled Rex's massive head close, burying his face in the soft fur, breathing in the familiar scent of dog and something else, something that smelled like home, like purpose, like a piece of his lost self. The years of emotional numbness, the carefully constructed walls around his heart, began to crumble under the sheer weight of this miraculous reunion. As he held Rex, the fragmented images that had flickered at the edges of his consciousness coalesced, solidifying into a harrowing tapestry of memory. It wasn't just a jumble of sensory inputs anymore. It was a story, a terrifying, agonizing narrative that had been buried deep beneath layers of trauma and medical amnesia. The scar on his arm burned, not with pain, but with the intensity of a truth long suppressed. He was back there, in the dust and chaos of a war-torn village, the air thick with the acrid smell of smoke and fear. The mission had been simple, or so they thought, a reconnaissance patrol. Standard procedure. He, Corporal Leo Maxwell, had been the handler, and Bravo, his K9 partner, had been the sharpest, most loyal German shepherd in the entire unit. Bravo wasn't just a dog. He was Leo's shadow. His ears, his nose, his early warning system. More than that, he was his confidant, the silent listener to the anxieties only another warrior could understand. The village had seemed eerily quiet at first, a deceptive calm before the storm. Their unit, led by Sergeant Miles Corbin, a man whose charisma masked a calculating ambition, moved through the narrow alleyways. Corbin was respected, even admired, for his fearless demeanor in combat, though a few whispers of his morally ambiguous methods had begun to circulate among the lower ranks. Leo, new to Corbin's squad, had initially dismissed them as disgruntled chatter. Then, the ambush. It had erupted from nowhere. A sudden storm of gunfire and explosions that tore through the quiet street. Chaos. Pure, unadulterated chaos. Leo remembered the searing pain in his arm as a bullet grazed him, the metallic scent of his own blood mixing with the dust. He remembered the desperate shouts of his comrades, the frantic scramble for cover. And through it all, Bravo, fiercely protective. Bravo had shielded him, pulling him away from a direct blast, his powerful body absorbing shrapnel that would have been fatal to Leo. Go, Bravo, go, Leo remembered shouting, even as his vision blurred from the shock and blood loss. Find cover, find safe. Bravo, trained to obey, had hesitated, looking back at his handler with an agonizing choice in his intelligent eyes. Loyalty versus command. But then, a sharp, piercing whistle, Corbin's distinct signal, cut through the din. It was a command meant for the K9, an emergency recall. Bravo, caught between protecting his injured handler and following a direct order from a superior, had reluctantly turned, his powerful strides carrying him towards the retreating sound of Corbin's whistle. Leo had been too disoriented, too injured, to fully comprehend what was happening. He'd seen Corbin, a shadowy figure through the smoke, signaling Bravo away from the immediate danger zone, away from Leo himself. He remembered a sickening lurch in his stomach, a flicker of betrayal, but the pain and confusion quickly overwhelmed him. The last thing he saw before succumbing to darkness was Bravo's receding silhouette, a flicker of regret in his K9 partner's quick glance backward. When Leo woke up, days later, in a sterile field hospital, his head throbbing, his arm bandaged, the doctors told him he was lucky to be alive. He'd been found by a patrol, unconscious, barely clinging to life. "Your K9 Bravo," a medic had said, his voice grim. "No sign. Corporal, we did a sweep, but nothing. We're sorry. He didn't make it out." The news had hit Leo like another physical blow. Bravo, gone. The loyal, fearless partner who had saved his life countless times. The guilt had been immediate, crushing. He'd lived with that unspoken burden for years. The belief that he had somehow failed his partner, that he had sent him to his death. He'd buried the memory deep, along with the rest of his wartime trauma, trying to build a new life. But the ghost of Bravo had always haunted him. Now, holding Rex, feeling the warmth of his fur, hearing his ecstatic whines, the pieces snapped into place with agonizing clarity. Bravo hadn't died. He'd been abandoned. And the man who had given that fateful whistle, who had deliberately pulled Bravo away from Leo in the chaos, who had then reported him dead, was Sergeant Miles Corbin. The truth hit Leo with a wave of nausea. Corbin, a man he had once looked up to, a man whose orders he had followed without question. But why? Why would he abandon a decorated K9, a hero, leaving him for dead in a war zone? Why would he lie about it, as if sensing Leo's internal turmoil? Rex pulled back slightly, looking into Leo's eyes with a profound understanding. He nudged Leo's scarred arm again, then gave a soft whine, as if confirming the shared memory, the shared trauma. It wasn't just Leo's story. It was their story. Sarah, who had been listening with a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension, finally found her voice. "Leo, what is it? What happened out there?" Her eyes darted between Leo's haunted face and Rex's now content, but still tear-streaked muzzle. "You two, you know each other." Leo took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to steady himself. "He's not Sergeant Rex," he said, his voice hoarse. "He's Bravo. My K9 partner from the military. We were separated in combat. He paused, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. They told me he was dead. Mark, always the pragmatist, frowned. But Sergeant Rex was found wandering months ago, hundreds of miles from any combat zone, and he was labeled unfit for service. Aggressive. His records were complicated. Officially discharged. Unfit aggressive. Leo scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping him. Bravo was the most disciplined, loyal K9 in the entire Corps. He saved my life more times than I can count. Something's wrong here. Terribly wrong. A cold knot of suspicion began to form in his stomach, quickly morphing into righteous fury. He wasn't found wandering. He was abandoned. And those records, they're fabricated. Someone wanted him gone. Someone wanted him discredited. His mind raced, piecing together the anomalies, the inexplicable abandonment, the false report of Bravo's death, the mysterious circumstances of Rex being found, and now the fabricated, unfit label. It was all too convenient, too neat. Bravo, the silent witness, had been silenced. But why? What had Bravo seen? What had Corbin done that required such an elaborate cover-up? The pieces clicked, forming a horrifying hypothesis. If Bravo was labeled unfit and aggressive, his testimony, if he ever appeared again, would be dismissed. He would be seen as a liability, a danger, rather than a credible witness. It was a perfect plan to silence a K9, a deliberate act to ensure there were no witnesses to whatever clandestine activities Corbin had been involved in. A new determination hardened Leo's features. The guilt he'd carried for years, the belief that he had abandoned Bravo, was replaced by a burning desire for justice, not just for Bravo, but for himself, for the truth. He looked into Rex's loyal, intelligent eyes, now shining with an almost unbearable joy, and felt a fierce promise solidify within him. "We need to find out what really happened," Leo stated, his voice low but firm. "Corbin, he's behind this. I need to know why." He ran his hand over Rex's head, feeling the warmth of the dog's gratitude, the unwavering trust that had persisted through years of separation and betrayal. "We're going to get you justice." Bravo. Both of us, Sarah and Mark, though still reeling from the revelation, saw the unwavering resolve in Leo's eyes. They had witnessed a miracle, a bond transcending years and unimaginable trauma, and they knew, instinctively, that they had to help. The story of Sergeant Rex. The broken K9 had just taken a shocking, dangerous turn. It was no longer just about a dog's despair. It was about a deep-seated betrayal, a cover-up, and a fight for justice that had only just begun. The haunted eyes of Sergeant Rex had finally found their reflection in the determined gaze of Leo Maxwell. And together, they would unearth the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how dangerous. The reunion with Bravo had ripped open a wound in Leo Maxwell's memory, one he thought had long since healed. The initial euphoria of finding his lost partner quickly gave way to a cold, simmering rage as the full horror of Sergeant Miles Corbin's betrayal became undeniable. It wasn't just a lapse in judgment during combat. It was a deliberate, calculated act. Leo held Bravo close, feeling the steady beat of the dog's heart against his chest, a rhythm of resilience that shamed his own years of quiet acceptance. He had believed the official reports, mourned his partner, and moved on. Corbin had ensured that. He remembered Corbin, not just as his commanding officer, but as a figure of authority and, initially, trust. Corbin was handsome in a rugged, military way, with an easy smile and a knack for inspiring confidence in his subordinates. He was lauded for his bravery, his strategic mind, and his ability to get results, even if those results sometimes skirted the edges of regulations. Leo had admired his decisiveness, his unflappable demeanor under fire. The idea that such a man could commit such a heinous act against a loyal canine and subsequently against a fellow soldier was almost too monstrous to comprehend. "He deliberately left Bravo," Leo murmured to Sarah, his voice low and tight with suppressed emotion, as Rex nuzzled his hand. Sensing his distress, "He whistled him away from me, knowing I was injured. He wanted him gone. And then he reported him dead. Fabricated records to discredit him if he ever reappeared." Sarah listened, her expression a mix of horror and growing understanding. She was a compassionate soul, but also pragmatic. But why Leo? What could a dog have possibly witnessed that would make someone go to such lengths? Leo shook his head, his brow furrowed in thought. "That's what I have to find out." But it wasn't just some random act of cruelty. This was calculated. Bravo was a canine. He was trained to observe, to track, to protect. He was a silent witness to whatever Corbin was doing. A terrifying possibility began to solidify in his mind. My unit. We were part of humanitarian aid missions sometimes, but there were whispers even then, about equipment disappearing, about unusual routes, about meetings with unsavory characters. He remembered a particular incident, weeks before the ambush. They had been dispatched to a remote village, ostensibly to deliver medical supplies. But instead of medical aid, a clandestine meeting had taken place in a deserted compound. Leo, with Bravo by his side, had been on perimeter duty, hidden in the shadows. He remembered the low murmurs of voices, the clinking of metal, the distinct smell of what seemed like newly manufactured weapons, not medicine. Bravo had been agitated, sniffing the air, his hackles slightly raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest, a sign of unusual, perhaps dangerous, activity. Leo had dismissed it then, attributing Bravo's unease to the unfamiliar surroundings. Now, it made chilling sense. Corbin was involved in something illicit, Leo concluded, his voice barely above a whisper. Something he needed to keep absolutely secret. And Bravo, my loyal, observant Bravo, was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He saw something. He heard something. He was a liability. The realization was like a punch to the gut. Bravo wasn't just abandoned. He was discarded. An inconvenient truth thrown away like trash. The unfit for service and aggressive labels were not just fabrications. They were a preemptive strike, a character assassination designed to nullify any future testimony Bravo might provide, if this canine, a decorated hero, ever miraculously reappeared. His official record would paint him as unstable, unreliable, a dog whose barks and actions could be easily dismissed as dangerous, erratic behavior, rather than the clear-headed observations of a highly trained animal. It explained Rex's prolonged despair, not just the pain of separation, but the profound injustice of his disgraced, tarnished name. He wasn't just lost. He was branded. Leo gently stroked Bravo's head, feeling a surge of protective fury. He carried this for years, he said, his voice raw. The isolation, the loss, the confusion, and the betrayal, not just by a human, but by the system he served, by the very country he risked his life for. Sarah, despite her shock, was practical. This is serious. Leo, this isn't just about a lost dog. This is about corruption, possibly treason. Corbin is still in the military. Isn't he a decorated officer? He was promoted. Last I heard, Leo confirmed, his jaw tight. He covered his tracks well. No one would ever suspect him. He's probably built a whole career on the foundation of those lies. The thought ignited a burning resolve within Leo. The past 5 years had been a quiet existence for him. A slow, methodical attempt to rebuild his life after the war. He'd found solace in manual labor, in the predictable rhythm of work that left little room for introspection. He'd convinced himself that moving forward meant letting go of the past, especially the painful, unresolved parts. But now, the past had crashed into his present with the force of a tidal wave, demanding to be addressed. He couldn't turn away. Not when his loyal partner, his Bravo, had suffered so grievously because of it. "We need proof," Leo stated, his eyes hardening. "Concrete evidence that connects Corbin to whatever he was doing, and to Bravo's abandonment. His official record, the unit's mission logs, anything that points to him. I'll start reaching out to old contacts, discreetly at first. Some of the guys from the unit, they might have seen things, too." Sarah nodded, her expression serious. "I'll do what I can here. The shelter has contacts in the animal welfare organizations, some even with connections to military K-9 programs. Maybe there's a way to access his full K-9 record, not just the summary we got when he was brought in. They might have more detailed notes about his supposed aggression or unfitness and who signed off on them." She understood the stakes. This wasn't just about finding a dog's owner. It was about exposing a potentially dangerous truth that could have far-reaching consequences for the rest of the day. Leo stayed with Bravo, not letting him out of his sight. He watched as Bravo, now visibly calmer, even playful, nudged a toy with his nose, something he hadn't done in months. He brought him water, which Bravo drank with an eagerness that bespoke a thirst for life that had finally returned. The dog seemed to revel in Leo's presence, his eyes following Leo's every move. A silent vow of unbreakable loyalty. It was clear that Bravo had found his purpose again, found his person, and was ready to follow him anywhere. As the sun began to set, painting the shelter walls with hues of orange and purple, Leo realized the enormity of the task ahead, confronting a decorated military officer, digging into potentially classified operations, and unearthing a years-old conspiracy wouldn't be easy. It would be dangerous. Corbin wouldn't have gone to such lengths to cover his tracks if he wasn't desperate to keep his secrets buried. But looking at Bravo, truly seeing the light that had returned to his eyes, the spirit that had been resurrected, Leo knew he had no choice. This was more than just justice for a dog. It was about honoring loyalty, exposing corruption, and reclaiming a part of himself that he thought was lost forever. Bravo's silent suffering, his years of despair, demanded an answer, and Leo, his voice now firm with renewed purpose, would be the one to provide it. "We're in this together, buddy," Leo murmured, stroking Bravo's head as the dog rested contentedly at his feet, finally at peace after years of torment. Just like before, only this time, we're not running from fire. We're running towards the truth. The whisper of betrayal had been loud enough to break a hero, but the roar of newfound purpose, ignited by a dog's tears, would be louder still. The first few days after the astounding reunion were a delicate dance of rediscovery for Leo and Bravo. The shelter staff, especially Sarah, gave them space, understanding that something profoundly private and healing was taking place. Bravo, no longer the withdrawn, Grieving Sergeant Rex was a transformed dog. He was alert, responsive, his tail a constant, gentle wag. He followed Leo like a shadow, a silent affirmation of their unbreakable bond. His eyes, once haunted by unspeakable sorrow, now shone with an intense, loving light, reflecting the promise of a future Leo was determined to build. Leo, too, felt a profound shift. The emotional weight he'd carried for years, the guilt of believing he'd abandoned his partner, began to lift, replaced by a fierce, protective resolve. He found himself sleeping soundly for the first time in years, the nightmares of combat replaced by dreams of Bravo, vibrant and alive. The deep-seated pain that had led to his reclusive life was slowly being cauterized by the warmth of Bravo's presence. His own life, which had felt aimless since his military discharge, suddenly had a powerful, undeniable purpose to get justice for Bravo. He spent hours poring over old military records, digging through archived news articles about his unit's deployments, and cross-referencing dates and locations. He focused specifically on the humanitarian aid missions that his unit, under Miles Corbin's command, had undertaken in the region where the ambush occurred. The official reports were meticulously clean, detailing successful aid deliveries and peaceful interactions. But Leo's gut told him otherwise. His initial inquiries were cautious. He reached out to a handful of old comrades, veterans he trusted implicitly, but who had since scattered across the country. He chose those who had been close to the operations, but far enough removed from Corbin's inner circle to avoid direct suspicion. He spoke in vague terms at first, asking about the general morale, the command structure, and any unusual events during their deployments. The responses were varied. Some remembered Corbin fondly, echoing the public perception of him as a brave, decisive leader. Others, however, expressed subtle discomfort. Corbin always got what he wanted. One former squad mate, a gruff but honest man named Miller, recalled over a coded online chat. Even if it meant bending the rules a little or a lot, didn't ask too many questions back then, just followed orders. But looking back, some things didn't sit right. Miller mentioned an odd incident where a critical supply convoy was rerouted unexpectedly, supposedly due to intelligence about insurgent activity, but never actually encountered any threats. Instead, it was met by a local contact. A shadowy figure, they were told, was an informant. He recalled Corbin dismissing their concerns about the informant's suspicious behavior and the unusual cargo loading procedures. We were told it was sensitive equipment for a covert operation. Miller typed, but it felt off and Bravo. Your dog. He was going ballistic that night, growling, barking at shadows. Corbin kept trying to quiet him down, said he was just spooked. This detail struck Leo with chilling clarity. Bravo's agitation during that supposed humanitarian mission, the unusual cargo, Corbin's urgency to silence him, it all aligned perfectly with Leo's fragmented memory of the clandestine meeting. Bravo wasn't spooked. He was reacting to something illicit, something dangerous. He was a canine trained to detect contraband, weapons, and hostile presences. His instincts were rarely wrong. The next piece of the puzzle came from Sarah. Leveraging her connections within the animal welfare network, she managed to access a more detailed, though still heavily redacted, K9 service record for Sergeant Rex. It showed a rapid decline in his suitability shortly before his abandonment, citing unpredictable aggression and failure to follow commands. But nestled deep within the digital file, hidden within a series of diagnostic reports, was a single, alarming note from a veterinary technician Subject K9, Rex Bravo, displayed no signs of aggression during initial assessment. Highly trained, intelligent, observed extreme distress, emotional trauma, but not unpredictable aggression. Recommend further psychological evaluation. Not discharge. Note, discharge papers rushed, signed by Commander Miles Corbin directly, overriding unit veterinarian recommendations. Sarah had highlighted the note, her anger palpable even through the phone. Miles Corbin, Leo. He personally signed off on Bravo's discharge, overriding the vet's professional opinion. This wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate act to have him removed and discredited. The pieces were falling into place, forming a horrifying picture of calculated deception. Corbin, driven by greed, had been using his position and military resources for illicit activities, likely weapons smuggling or something equally nefarious. Bravo had accidentally witnessed a critical transaction or operation, becoming an inconvenient, intelligent witness. Corbin couldn't simply kill a decorated K9 hero without raising suspicion, especially one assigned to a living soldier like Leo. So, he orchestrated Bravo's abandonment during the chaos of the ambush, reported him dead, and then preemptively discredited him with fabricated records. It was a perfectly executed plan to ensure there were no living witnesses, human or animal, to his crimes. The thought of Bravo wandering, lost and alone, carrying the weight of this profound injustice, tore at Leo's heart. He saw the years of despair in Rex's eyes at the shelter, the quiet acceptance of his perceived abandonment, and the agony of being labeled unfit after a lifetime of loyalty and service. It was a promise broken, not just to a dog, but to the very ideals of military honor. "This is bigger than just Bravo and me," Leo told Sarah, his voice grim. "Corbin needs to be exposed, not just for what he did to Bravo, but for the crimes he was committing under the guise of military operations. Who knows how many lives he put at risk, how many resources he misused." His resolve solidified. This wasn't just about personal vendetta. It was about exposing corruption at a high level, ensuring that justice was served for all those who might have been affected by Corbin's greed. Bravo's silent suffering had become a beacon, illuminating a path towards a truth that needed to be uncovered. He started compiling all the information Miller's fragmented recollections, Sarah's retrieved K9 records, his own re-examined memories, and any subtle inconsistencies he found in official reports. He began to see patterns, connecting dates of humanitarian missions with unexplained financial transactions or unusual troop movements that didn't align with stated objectives. His ultimate goal was to redeem Bravo's life, to clear his name, and to restore the honor that had been so cruelly stripped away. But to do that, he had to expose Miles Corbin. No matter the risk, this was not just a fight for a dog. It was a battle for truth, integrity, and the sacred bond between a soldier and his K9 partner, a bond that Corbin had so carelessly, so cruelly broken. Leo looked at Bravo, who was now resting his head on Leo's knee, his eyes soft and trusting. "We're going to fix this, buddy," he whispered, stroking the dog's powerful neck. "Your life, your honor, it's going to be redeemed, I promise." And in that moment, the years of silent pain and unaddressed trauma began to recede, replaced by a surge of purpose that promised not just justice, but a profound, healing sense of completion. The weight of the truth, once a crushing burden, now fueled Leo Maxwell with a cold, clear resolve, with Bravo, his loyal K9 partner, finally by his side. The fragmented memories of their shared past sharpened into a vivid picture of betrayal. The immediate challenge was clear: how to unearth concrete evidence against Sergeant Miles Corbin, a man who had meticulously covered his tracks and risen through the ranks, his reputation untarnished. Leo knew a direct confrontation was impossible. Corbin was powerful, cunning, and likely still had connections within the military that could easily dismiss a lone veteran's accusations as a disgruntled fantasy. He needed to be discreet, to plant seeds of suspicion that would grow into an undeniable truth. He started his quiet investigation by re-establishing contact with more of his former military comrades, not just casual acquaintances, but those he knew possessed a strong moral compass, even if they had been too junior or too trusting to question Corbin's actions at the time. He avoided any mention of Bravo initially, focusing instead on subtle queries about specific missions, logistics, and any unusual orders they might have received under Corbin's command. "Hey, remember that supply run near Kandahar back in '09? Leo would casually ask in a coded message or a brief. Encrypted call. "The one where we rerouted through that old deserted compound. What was that about? Anyway, most replies were vague. "Just following orders, Leo. Standard intel stuff. Probably, but a few, like the gruff Miller, provided small, unsettling details. Miller recounted a time when a sealed crate, supposedly containing spare parts, was treated with an almost fanatical secrecy by Corbin and a small, trusted group of his inner circle. No one else was allowed near it, Miller recalled. And Bravo, your dog. He was barking up a storm, scratching at the crate. Corbin just laughed it off, said the dog was just agitated by the desert dust. Another former soldier, Sergeant Ramirez, who had been a logistics specialist, mentioned a peculiar discrepancy in fuel consumption records during some of Corbin's special operations. It never quite added up, Ramirez admitted over a late-night video call, his face etched with fatigue. More fuel used than the distance warranted. I just put it down to bad tracking or a mistake. But looking back, it was consistent on some of those humanitarian aid runs. Excessive fuel consumption could indicate undeclared detours, additional cargo weight, or clandestine rendezvous points. Each seemingly innocuous detail, each hesitant recollection, was a tiny thread. Leo meticulously recorded everything, cross-referencing names, dates, and locations. He realized that the sheer number of small inconsistencies, when viewed collectively, formed a pattern too disturbing to ignore. Corbin wasn't just bending the rules, he was operating an entirely separate, illicit enterprise, using military resources as cover. Meanwhile, Bravo's healing progressed exponentially, with Leo's constant presence. The last vestiges of the shelter dog's despair vanished. He was no longer Sergeant Rex, the broken canine, but Bravo, the loyal, vibrant partner Leo remembered. He began to retrieve toys with gusto, engage in playful tug-of-war, and even bark joyously when Leo returned from an errand. His intelligence, once dulled by grief, shone brightly. He seemed to understand Leo's unspoken mission, offering silent support. His head resting on Leo's foot during the late-night research sessions, or a soft nudge when Leo grew frustrated. Sarah and the shelter staff were astounded by Bravo's transformation. "It's a miracle, Leo," Sarah would say, watching Bravo perform tricks for a fascinated crowd of potential adopters. "He's a different dog entirely. You truly brought him back." But she also saw the determination in Leo's eyes, knowing that this newfound peace for Bravo was contingent on justice being served. Leo's investigation led him down unexpected paths. He delved into the shadowy world of black market arms dealing, researching notorious figures and common smuggling routes in the regions where Corbin had been deployed. He learned about the various ways military assets could be diverted, how lost or damaged equipment could be written off and then sold. The puzzle pieces began to fit with an horrifying precision. Bravo wasn't just a witness. He was a K-9 trained to detect exactly the kind of illicit cargo Corbin was moving. His agitation during those humanitarian missions wasn't just a dog being spooked. It was Bravo alerting to something dangerous and illegal. He also found disturbing patterns in Corbin's financial records. Publicly available ones. Of course, a decorated officer living well beyond his means, with unexplained wealth trickling in through shell corporations and offshore accounts. It was circumstantial, but it added to the growing mountain of suspicion. As Leo's inquiries became more pointed, the subtle resistance he encountered began to shift. The evasiveness from some former colleagues grew more pronounced. A few suddenly became unavailable, their phone numbers disconnected, their social media profiles deleted. It was a clear sign that Corbin's network was far-reaching, and someone was taking notice of Leo's persistent digging. One evening, after an encrypted call with Miller, where they discussed a particularly sensitive detail about Corbin's movements, Leo noticed a black sedan parked down his street. It wasn't just passing by. It was idling, lights off. For an unusually long time, he dismissed it at first, a symptom of his growing paranoia. But then, the next night, he saw it again. And the night after that, Bravo, usually calm and quiet in the apartment, began to growl softly whenever the sedan was present. His hackles would rise, a low, rumbling warning escaping his chest. Bravo's instincts were rarely wrong. He was sensing a threat, a malevolent presence that Leo's human senses couldn't yet fully perceive. "Easy, boy," Leo would soothe, stroking Bravo's head, but his heart would quicken. The threat was real. Corbin was becoming aware that someone was digging, and he wouldn't tolerate it. The stakes were rising, and Leo knew he had to accelerate his efforts. The calm, calculated pursuit of truth was about to become a desperate race against time. He had redeemed Bravo's life. Now he had to protect it, and their shared secret. From the man who had tried to bury them both, the subtle threats had escalated, transforming Leo Maxwell's quiet investigation into a high-stakes hunt. The black sedan became a chillingly persistent shadow, a constant reminder that Miles Corbin's reach was far wider and his methods far more ruthless than Leo had anticipated. Bravo, his instincts sharper than any human's, remained on high alert, his low growls and watchful eyes a silent alarm system. He would often stare intently out the window, his ears swiveling, sensing the unseen danger lurking in the periphery. Leo knew he couldn't afford to be reckless. One wrong move, and not only would his quest for justice unravel, but his life, and potentially Bravo's, would be in grave danger. He needed concrete, undeniable evidence that would stand up in court and expose Corbin for the corrupt officer he was. Not just a disgruntled veteran's accusations. He intensified his research, focusing on the financial trail. Miles Corbin, despite his modest military salary, lived a lavish lifestyle. Leo meticulously cross-referenced Corbin's publicly accessible financial disclosures with his known deployments. He found a significant spike in Corbin's declared assets around the same time as the humanitarian aid missions in the specific region where Bravo had been abandoned and Leo had been injured. It was a statistical anomaly too glaring to be coincidental. This led him down a rabbit hole of corporate records. He discovered several shell corporations registered in offshore tax havens, all with obscure names and convoluted ownership structures, but with subtle links back to individuals who had served under Corbin or had known ties to his family. It was a complex web, designed to obscure the true source of illicit funds. One evening, while sifting through old military press releases about unit achievements, Leo stumbled upon an innocuous photograph. It showed Corbin accepting an award, shaking hands with a high-ranking official. In the background, partially obscured, was a civilian contractor known for his involvement in logistics and procurement for military operations. Leo recognized the contractor's face from a brief, uneasy encounter during one of those humanitarian deployments, the same man who had been at the clandestine meeting where Bravo had been agitated. A quick search revealed the contractor, Elias Thorne, had a checkered past, whispers of shady dealings, but had always managed to evade serious legal repercussions due to his powerful connections. Thorne was the missing link. He was the conduit, the civilian face of Corbin's illicit enterprise. Leo shared his findings with Sarah, who, despite her growing apprehension, remained a steadfast ally. "This is big. Leo," she said, her voice strained. "Thorne's name has come up in some pretty major investigations. He's slippery if Corbin's connected to him. You're dealing with a far more dangerous network than just a rogue officer." Sarah, using her own network, discreetly inquired about Thorne within the animal welfare community. She found a tenuous link. Thorne had a distant relative who was a major donor to a high-profile animal rescue organization that occasionally worked with retired military canines. It was a long shot, but it suggested a possible angle, however slim, to gather intelligence. Leo also doubled down on his efforts to connect with Miller, the former squad mate who had expressed doubts about Corbin's activities. Miller, initially hesitant, grew increasingly concerned as Leo shared some of his findings, carefully omitting the most dangerous details. The black sedan outside Leo's apartment served as a stark warning, reinforcing the urgency. "Look, Leo," Miller finally confessed during a late-night, untraceable call. "I kept some things, little things, stuff that bothered me, but I didn't know what to do with manifests, inventory sheets, things that showed discrepancies, mostly small stuff, easily dismissed. But when you add them up, it paints a picture." He described a secure flash drive he had kept hidden, containing encrypted data he had meticulously copied over the years. A quiet act of defiance against the discomfort he felt about Corbin's operations. "I didn't want to believe it. You know he was our commander. But after hearing what you found out about Bravo, about what he did, I can't stay silent anymore." This was the breakthrough Leo desperately needed. Digital evidence, direct from someone who had been there. It was risky for Miller. Profoundly so. Leo knew he had to protect him. They arranged a clandestine meeting for the following night, a deserted park after midnight. Leo was meticulous in his preparations, scouting the location during the day, identifying escape routes, blind spots, and potential ambush points. He also armed himself, a necessary precaution given the escalating threats. Bravo, sensing the tension, remained unusually quiet, his presence a steady, reassuring anchor. The meeting was tense. Miller, a gaunt figure in the shadows, was visibly nervous, constantly scanning his surroundings. He quickly handed Leo a small, encrypted flash drive. "It's all there. Leo," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Financial records, communication logs, manifests. It shows where the aid supplies really went, who received them, and how much money changed hands. It implicates Corbin directly. And Thorne. It's the proof you need." Miller then added a crucial piece of information. a detail that solidified the entire picture of betrayal. Corbin had a satellite phone, a burner phone, for those special operations. I saw him use it right after your ambush. He was talking to someone, giving orders, and he specifically mentioned the K9, said the K9 is a liability, make sure it's handled. Then he made a call to a private number, reporting Bravo as KIA, no trace. He deliberately made sure there would be no official record of Bravo surviving. The revelation was a punch to the gut. It confirmed Leo's deepest fears. Bravo's abandonment was a cold-blooded assassination attempt, not just a fortunate escape. Corbin had wanted Bravo dead, silenced, because of what he had witnessed. The unfit for service label was a backup plan, a way to nullify his testimony if the initial attempt failed. As Leo grasped the flash drive, a sudden, sharp glint of light caught his eye. A reflection from a distant building. A scope. "Get down, Miller!" Leo roared, shoving his former comrade hard. He dove for cover behind a thick oak tree, pulling Bravo down with him just as a muffled crack echoed through the park. A bullet splintered the wood where Leo's head had been moments before. The black sedan. It had been waiting. Corbin's network was indeed vast, and they had been watching. The threat had escalated from intimidation to attempted murder. Miller scrambled, terrified, in the opposite direction, disappearing into the darkness. Leo knew he couldn't pursue the vehicle. His priority was Bravo's safety and the precious flash drive. He heard the sedan's engine rev tires squealing as it sped away. The assassination attempt foiled. For now, breathing heavily, Leo checked Bravo, who was uninjured, trembling slightly but alert. "You okay?" "Boy," he whispered, running a reassuring hand over the dog's coat. Bravo nudged him. A soft whine, then began to growl, staring intently at the direction the car had sped off. His senses were on fire. The encounter solidified Leo's resolve. There was no turning back. He had the evidence. Now. He needed to make sure it saw the light of day. Corbin would stop at nothing to protect his secrets. And Leo knew he had to act quickly, not just for justice, but for his own survival and for Bravo's. The hunt was on. And this time, the hunted had teeth. The near-fatal ambush in the park had shattered any illusion of safety Leo Maxwell might have harbored. The flash drive, now clutched tightly in his hand, felt like a ticking time bomb. Miles Corbin wasn't just attempting to cover up past misdeeds. He was actively eliminating anyone who threatened his meticulously constructed empire of lies. The bullet meant for Leo had been a chilling declaration of war. Leo immediately sought refuge in Sarah's apartment. He knew his own place was compromised, and the shelter, while a sanctuary for animals was too open, too vulnerable for the kind of clandestine operation he was now embroiled in. Sarah, though visibly shaken by the news of the shooting, didn't hesitate. Her concern for Leo and Bravo outweighed any personal fear. "We need to get this to someone who can act on it," Sarah urged, looking at the small flash drive with a mixture of awe and terror. The military, the FBI, someone with the power to take down Corbin. "Not yet," Leo countered, his mind racing. "Corbin has connections everywhere. If we go to the wrong person, this evidence could be buried, or worse, twisted against us. We need to find someone unimpeachable, someone known for cutting through red tape and corruption." He spent the next few days in a high-alert state, always with Bravo by his side. The loyal K9 was a constant source of comfort and an invaluable sentinel. Bravo would growl softly at the slightest unusual sound. his ears swiveling, his eyes constantly scanning. He seemed to understand the gravity of their situation, his playful demeanor replaced by a serious, protective vigilance. Leo trusted Bravo's instincts more than his own. His thoughts kept returning to Miller. The man had risked everything to hand over the evidence. Leo knew he had to ensure Miller's safety, but any direct contact could expose them both. He subtly checked online news outlets, searching for any reports of an incident in the park, but found nothing. Corbin was clearly effective at suppressing information. Leo began researching investigative journalists, looking for names known for their integrity, their fearlessness in exposing corruption, and their track record of successful high-profile cases. He found several, but one name consistently stood out: Rebecca Chen, a hard-hitting journalist for a major independent news organization, renowned for her exposés on government and military misconduct. She was known for her meticulous fact-checking, her vast network of sources, and her unwavering commitment to the truth. No matter how uncomfortable, she's the one, Leo declared to Sarah. Pointing to an article about Chen's recent uncovering of a scandal within a defense contractor company, she's independent, she doesn't play by anyone else's rules, and she knows how to handle sensitive information. The challenge then became how to approach Rebecca Chen without being intercepted by Corbin's operatives. A direct email or phone call could be monitored. He needed a secure, anonymous way to make contact, to convince her that he possessed explosive information without giving away too much. He meticulously crafted an anonymous, encrypted message, outlining just enough detail to pique her interest without revealing anything that could identify him or Bravo. He mentioned classified military misconduct, a decorated officer involved in illicit activities, and a K-9 witness whose testimony was deliberately suppressed. He also hinted at the nature of the evidence, mentioning digital records and first-hand testimony. He ended the message with a burner email address and a cryptic instruction to reply only if she was genuinely interested in pursuing a dangerous but world-changing story. He used a public library computer, wiping his digital footprint clean after sending it. He waited. The agonizing suspense was almost unbearable. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every distant siren sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. Bravo, sensing his tension, would press closer. A comforting presence. 3 days later, an encrypted reply arrived. It was brief. To the point, intrigued. Provide verifiable proof of claims. One detail that cannot be fabricated. Use the same channel. RC. Leo smiled grimly. She was cautious. Exactly what he needed. He chose the one detail that could only come from someone who knew Corbin's true colors and had access to his hidden dealings, the existence of the burner satellite phone Corbin used during specific humanitarian aid missions, and the specific private number he called after the ambush. This was information Miller had provided, a detail not found in any public record. He sent the detail, then destroyed the burner email and deleted all traces from the public computer. He knew that if Corbin's people were monitoring Rebecca Chen's communications, this one detail would confirm to them that someone was indeed close to uncovering his deepest secrets. It was a risky move, but a necessary one to gain Chen's trust. The next morning, another encrypted message arrived from RC. This one was longer, more direct. Meet me. Tomorrow night. Abandoned warehouse district. Old docks. Midnight. Come alone if you bring anyone, or if I detect any surveillance. The deal is off. Bring everything you have. It was the confrontation he had sought, but also feared. A clandestine meeting in a deserted, isolated location. The perfect place for Corbin to stage another accident. He reread the message, noting the emphasis on alone and no surveillance. Rebecca Chen was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, or, more likely, she understood the stakes and the necessity of absolute discretion. He couldn't risk bringing Bravo to such a dangerous meeting. It tore at him to leave his partner. But he knew Bravo's safety was paramount. He arranged for Sarah to take Bravo to a trusted, secure location, a friend's secluded farm several hours outside the city, just for the night. Sarah, though worried, understood. That night, as the time for the meeting approached, Leo felt a resurgence of his old military training. His senses sharpened, his mind focused. He put on dark clothing, comfortable shoes, and carried only the flash drive and a concealed weapon. He left his phone behind, not wanting any traceable signal. He arrived at the designated meeting point early, hiding in the shadows, observing. The abandoned warehouse district was desolate, the air heavy with the smell of decay and damp earth. Moonlight filtered through broken skylights, casting eerie shadows. He saw no one, heard nothing but the distant rumble of a train. Precisely at midnight, a sleek, unmarked black sedan pulled silently into the district, its headlights off. It was not the same sedan that had tried to kill him. This one was newer, more discreet. A single figure emerged from the driver's side, Rebecca Chen. She was smaller than he had imagined from her fierce reputation, but her posture exuded confidence, her eyes sharp and intelligent even in the dim light. She held a small, professional-grade camera, its lens glinting. She scanned her surroundings, her gaze piercing the darkness, then walked deliberately to a central clearing, stopping directly under a patch of moonlight. She stood there, waiting, a picture of unflappable resolve. Leo emerged from the shadows, his footsteps crunching softly on the gravel. "Miss Chen," he said, his voice low. She turned, her eyes narrowed, assessing him. "Mr. Maxwell, I presume," she asked, her voice calm and steady. "You have my attention. Now, do you have the proof?" He held out the flash drive. "It's all here. Every piece of the puzzle. Financial records, communication logs, witness testimony. Everything that implicates Miles Corbin in a massive scheme of corruption and weapon smuggling, and the deliberate abandonment of a decorated K-9 to cover his tracks." Rebecca Chen took the flash drive, her fingers brushing his, and he felt a profound sense of relief. The evidence was now out of his hands, in the possession of someone who knew how to wield it. "This is dangerous, Mr. Maxwell," she stated, her voice devoid of emotion. "More dangerous than you know." "I know," Leo replied, thinking of the bullet that had narrowly missed him. "Corbin tried to kill me." Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise. "He's more desperate than I thought." "Good. That means we're close." She looked at the flash drive, then back at Leo. "You understand that once this breaks, your life will never be the same. You'll be a target." "My life hasn't been the same since Bravo was abandoned," Leo said, his voice hard. "And it won't be right until justice is served. For him, for everyone Corbin has hurt." Rebecca Chen nodded slowly. "Then we have a deal. I'll need your full cooperation, every detail, every connection. This story is going to shake the foundations of some very powerful institutions." She looked around the desolate warehouse, then back at Leo, her expression firm. "Let's get to work." The true confrontation wasn't with Corbin directly. Not yet. It was here, in the cold, silent shadows of the abandoned docks, as Leo handed over the key to unlocking years of corruption. The battle for truth had truly begun. The meeting with Rebecca Chen had been a crucible for Leo Maxwell, handing over the flash drive, the culmination of weeks of painstaking, dangerous investigation, had brought a profound sense of relief, yet it also ignited a new, terrifying phase of his battle. He returned to Sarah's apartment in the pre-dawn hours, the city still cloaked in a damp, silent chill. Bravo, sensing his arrival, met him at the door with a soft whine, nuzzling his hand, his eyes filled with an almost human understanding. "It's done," Leo murmured, sinking onto the couch, the adrenaline slowly draining from his limbs. "She has it, Rebecca Chen." Sarah, who had been anxiously waiting up, let out a shaky breath. "Thank God. But now..." "Now what?" "Now we wait," Leo replied, running a hand through Bravo's fur. "And we prepare. Corbin knows. He knows I'm digging, and he knows I've found something. He won't sit idly by." His words proved prophetic. Miles Corbin, a man whose carefully constructed facade of integrity was built on a foundation of lies and illicit wealth, was indeed aware his network, far-reaching and insidious, had confirmed Leo Maxwell's clandestine meeting with the notorious investigative journalist, Rebecca Chen. The news hit Corbin like a physical blow. Panic, cold and sharp, began to gnaw at his carefully controlled composure. He had dismissed Leo as a disgruntled, traumatized veteran, a minor annoyance. Now, he was a genuine threat, a loose end that could unravel everything. Corbin was not a man to leave things to chance. His initial attempts at intimidation, the black sedan, the subtle warnings, had failed. The assassination attempt in the park had been a desperate escalation, and its failure only fueled his paranoia. He knew Chen wouldn't sit on the information. She would verify it, dissect it, and then unleash it with devastating precision. He had to act, and he had to act decisively. The threats against Leo began subtly at first, then escalated with chilling rapidity. The black sedan reappeared, no longer just idling, but following Leo's movements. Even when he took Bravo for walks in seemingly innocuous public parks, the surveillance became overt, almost taunting. Leo would catch glimpses of the same dark-tinted windows, the same nondescript figures, always just out of reach, always watching. Bravo would growl, a low, continuous rumble in his chest, his hackles raised, his eyes fixed on the distant vehicle. He was Leo's living, breathing radar, his unwavering protector. Then came the phone calls. Anonymous, untraceable numbers when Leo answered. There would be only silence, or sometimes a distorted, static-laden voice whispering cryptic warnings. "Some things are better left buried. Corporal Maxwell." Or, more chillingly, "Accidents happen, even to good people, and good dogs." One evening, Leo returned to Sarah's apartment to find the front door ajar. His heart leapt into his throat. He pushed Bravo behind him, drawing his concealed weapon, and slowly entered. Nothing was stolen. No furniture was overturned, but on the coffee table, carefully placed atop a stack of newspapers, was a single, faded photograph. It was an old military photo, taken years ago, showing Leo and Bravo, young and full of life, standing proudly together during a training exercise. Pinned to the photo was a single, rusted K9 tag, not Bravo's, but a generic one, a stark, silent message. It was a clear, terrifying warning. "We know who you are. We know what you care about, and we can get to you." Bravo, usually so calm inside, was agitated, sniffing the air, his growl deep and menacing. He knew. He understood the violation. Sarah, upon seeing the photo, gasped, her face paling. They were here. Leo, in my home. They want to scare me, Leo said, his voice flat, but his eyes burned with a cold fury. They want me to back off, but they don't understand. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about Bravo and about the truth. The threats extended beyond Leo. The shelter began receiving anonymous complaints, fabricated accusations of animal neglect and mismanagement. Sarah found herself facing unexpected inspections. Her resources stretched thin, defending against baseless claims, while she managed to fend off most of them. The constant harassment was a drain, a subtle pressure designed to make her question her alliance with Leo. They're trying to isolate me. Leo realized. Cut off my support. They know I rely on you. Sarah, they're trying to make you choose. I'm not going anywhere. Leo, Sarah declared, her jaw set. We're in this together. For Rex. For Bravo. Rebecca Chen, meanwhile, was working tirelessly. She confirmed the authenticity of the flash drive's contents with her own sources, cross-referencing the financial records, the communication logs, and the inconsistencies in military reports. The evidence against Corbin was damning, irrefutable, but she also recognized the immense power and influence Corbin wielded to take him down. They needed more than just a story. They needed a public outcry, a groundswell of support that would force the military and law enforcement to act. She began to craft the narrative, weaving together Leo's fragmented memories, Miller's testimony, Sarah's K9 records, and the cold, hard data from the flash drive. The story of Bravo, the abandoned K9 hero, was the emotional core, the human and animal element that would resonate with the public as Chen prepared her exposé. Corbin's desperation intensified. He knew the clock was ticking. He couldn't risk the story breaking. He needed to silence Leo, permanently, before Chen could publish. One late afternoon, as Leo was walking Bravo in a secluded, wooded area near Sarah's apartment, a black van, different from the sedan, suddenly veered off the road, tires spitting gravel. It sped directly towards them. Leo reacted instantly, his military training kicking in. Bravo! Run! He roared, shoving the dog towards the dense undergrowth. Bravo, instead of fleeing, turned, a ferocious snarl ripping from his throat. He lunged towards the oncoming van, a blur of muscle and teeth, a loyal shield between Leo and the imminent danger. No, Bravo, no, Leo screamed, terrified for his partner. He grabbed Bravo's harness, pulling him back with all his might, just as the van swerved violently, its driver clearly surprised by the K9's unexpected aggression. The van skidded to a halt, two burly figures in dark clothing spilling out, their faces obscured by balaclavas. Leo didn't hesitate. He knew these weren't just intimidators. They were professional enforcers. He pulled Bravo into the woods, scrambling through the thorny bushes, ignoring the scratches and scrapes. The men from the van pursued, crashing through the undergrowth, shouting. Bravo, despite Leo's efforts to protect him, was in his element. He moved like a phantom through the trees, circling back, nipping at the heels of their pursuers, his barks echoing through the quiet woods, disorienting them. He was a K9 trained for this. He was protecting his handler, Leo, using the terrain to his advantage, managed to create distance. He heard the frustrated shouts of the men, their heavy footsteps receding. He and Bravo emerged from the woods, breathless but safe, several blocks away. The near abduction attempt was a stark, undeniable message. Corbin wasn't playing games anymore. He was going for the kill. Leo realized he couldn't stay hidden forever. He couldn't wait for Rebecca Chen to publish. He needed to take proactive steps, to force Corbin's hand, to bring the truth into the light before he, or worse, Bravo, became another casualty of Corbin's ruthless ambition. He called Rebecca Chen immediately, his voice tight with urgency. They just tried to take me. Rebecca, they came for me and Bravo. Corbin is desperate. You need to accelerate. We need to go public. Now. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Understood. Leo. Chen's voice was calm, but with an underlying steel. I've been preparing for this. The story is ready. I just needed the final push. This is it. We go live tomorrow. Get ready. Leo. The storm is coming. Leo hung up, his gaze falling on Bravo, who was now panting softly, his eyes still alert, his tail giving a small, confident wag. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach, but it was now overshadowed by a fierce, unyielding determination. He had promised Bravo justice, a life redeemed, and he would see that promise through, no matter the cost. The fight had moved from the shadows to the precipice of public exposure, and the stakes had never been higher. The phone call with Rebecca Chen had been short, sharp, and decisive. We go live tomorrow. Those words echoed in Leo Maxwell's mind, a clarion call that ignited a mix of dread and exhilaration. The waiting game was over. The battle would soon be fought in the court of public opinion, a volatile arena where perception could be as powerful as truth. Miles Corbin, cornered and desperate, would undoubtedly unleash everything he had. Leo immediately called Sarah, his voice devoid of his usual calm. They tried to take me and Bravo today, he relayed, recounting the terrifying encounter in the woods. Corbin is going for broke. Rebecca is publishing the story tomorrow. Bravo needs to be out of the city tonight, completely off the grid. Sarah, though shaken, acted swiftly. She had a trusted friend, a retired canine handler named Clara, who lived on a secluded farm several hours away, nestled deep within a national forest. Clara was discreet, experienced with traumatized working dogs, and owed Sarah a significant favor. Within an hour, Bravo was gently loaded into Sarah's car, a blanket covering him, his intelligent eyes fixed on Leo until the very last moment. Leo watched them disappear into the gathering dusk, a pang of fear and longing twisting in his gut, separating from Bravo, even for his safety, felt like tearing a part of himself away. With Bravo secured, Leo turned his attention to the immediate danger. He couldn't afford to be caught unawares. He reached out to two of his former military contacts he trusted implicitly, Sergeant Miller, who had provided the crucial flash drive, and another, Sergeant First Class David Mack McGregor, a formidable combat engineer known for his strategic thinking and unwavering loyalty. He'd served with Mack on multiple tours, and Mack had always been the one you wanted by your side when things went sideways. He arranged separate, highly encrypted video calls. To Miller, he said, "The story's breaking tomorrow. Corbin's tried to take me out. You need to go dark, now. Get to a safe house, somewhere untraceable. Until this blows over, your testimony is vital, but only if you're alive to give it." Miller, already jumpy from the park ambush, agreed without hesitation, promising to disappear. To Mack, Leo was more direct. "I need your help, old friend. It's about Corbin. He's been running an illegal operation, smuggling weapons under the military's nose, And he abandoned Bravo, my K9, to cover his tracks. He tried to kill me today. Mac's face, usually impassive, hardened. Corbin, I always had a bad feeling about that snake. What do you need? I need eyes. I need security. I need to know Corbin's next move before he makes it. Rebecca Chen, a journalist, is publishing the expose tomorrow. Once that happens, all hell is going to break loose. Mac didn't ask for details, didn't question the gravity of the situation. He simply understood. Consider it done. I'll reach out to a few trusted guys. We'll set up a perimeter, keep you safe. We'll make sure you get to wherever you need to be to tell your story. Mac was a man of action, a quiet force. He knew the dirty underbelly of military operations, and the idea of a corrupt officer tarnishing their brotherhood was anathema to him. The plan coalesced. Rebecca Chen would publish the expose first thing in the morning, hitting news sites and social media with the full weight of her organization's credibility. The story would be explosive, detailing Corbin's illicit activities, the systematic cover-up, and the heartbreaking tale of Bravo's abandonment and subsequent miraculous reunion with Leo. Once the story broke, Leo would need to be immediately available for interviews, to put a face and a voice to Bravo's suffering and Corbin's crimes. This was the most perilous part. He would be a high-value target, a living witness that Corbin desperately needed to silence. Mac and his small, hand-picked team of former special ops soldiers would be his shield, ensuring he reached the designated broadcast studio safely. The night stretched long, filled with an electric tension. Leo couldn't sleep. He paced Sarah's apartment, constantly checking the windows, listening to every creak of the old building. The absence of Bravo was a physical ache, a void that made him feel vulnerable. Despite Mac's assurances, he thought of Bravo, safe on Clara's farm, hopefully oblivious to the storm brewing around his name. As dawn approached, painting the sky with streaks of bruised purple and angry orange, Leo received a message from Rebecca Chen. It was a single word, live. He immediately pulled up the news site. The headline screamed at him from the screen. Stark and powerful. Betrayal of the bravest decorated K9, abandoned in war zone to cover up officers' illegal arms trade. Beneath it was a powerful photo collage, a majestic, younger Bravo in his K9 vest, a somber Sergeant Rex in his shelter kennel, and a recent, heartwarming shot of Leo and Bravo together. The article itself was a meticulously researched, damning indictment of Miles Corbin, detailing the shell corporations, the suspicious fuel consumption, the witness testimony from Miller, and the specific events of the ambush that had led to Bravo's abandonment. It highlighted the veterinary note overriding Bravo's discharge, a stark illustration of Corbin's deliberate actions. The comments section exploded almost immediately. Outrage, disbelief, and a wave of raw emotion poured in from readers. The story of Bravo, the loyal K9 hero, resonated deeply, touching a nerve that went beyond mere military misconduct. It was a story of a silent warrior betrayed, a symbol of broken trust and corrupt power. Before Leo could fully process the impact, his phone rang. It was Rebecca Chen. "They're trying to suppress it," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "Traffic is through the roof. Our servers are straining, but it's out. It's everywhere. The major news outlets are picking it up, citing our report. Get ready. Leo, my team is sending Mac your location now. You need to be at the studio in 2 hours for the first live interview." As Leo hung up, a knock echoed from Sarah's front door. It wasn't the tentative knock of a friend, but a firm, urgent rap. Leo's heart pounded. He grabbed his weapon, positioning himself strategically. The door burst open. It wasn't Corbin's men. It was Mac, flanked by two other burly, grim-faced veterans. They were dressed in plain clothes, but their movements were precise, their eyes sharp, constantly scanning. "Time to go, Corporal," Mac said, his voice low and urgent. "Corbin's people are already on the move. They hit the shelter, looking for Bravo. Sarah, you need to get out of here too. Now." Sarah, pale but resolute, grabbed her keys. "I'm going to Clara's. I'll make sure Bravo is safe." "Good. Stay off the main roads. Use back routes," Leo instructed. Mac's team moved with practiced efficiency. One man secured the perimeter outside Sarah's apartment. The other, a quiet, powerfully built veteran named Jackson, took point as they moved towards a waiting, nondescript SUV as they emerged onto the street. The black sedan Leo had come to dread was already there, blocking the end of the block. Its windows, as always, were heavily tinted. More cars, unmarked, began to converge from other directions. Corbin was sending a clear message he would not let Leo speak. "Incoming!" Jackson barked, drawing his own weapon, his eyes narrowed. "They're moving fast." Mac opened the SUV door. "Get in, Leo, now." Leo scrambled into the back seat as Mac and Jackson laid down suppressing fire. Not to kill, but to buy precious seconds. The SUV lurched forward, tires squealing, as its driver, another of Mac's veterans, expertly maneuvered through the tightening cordon. Shots rang out, pinging off the armored plating of the SUV. The chase was on, a high-speed, deadly game of cat and mouse through the morning city streets. Corbin's desperate bid to silence Leo before he could appear on live television. The peril was immediate, visceral, but so was Leo's resolve. He clutched the seat, his jaw set, thinking of Bravo, of justice, of the truth that was finally breaking free. He would not be silenced, not now, not ever. The armored SUV roared through the city streets, a bullet-riddled testament to Miles Corbin's desperation. Inside, Leo Maxwell, flanked by Mac and Jackson, braced himself as the vehicle swerved, narrowly avoiding a collision with a civilian car. The cacophony of screeching tires, blaring horns, and the occasional muffled thud of a bullet hitting their reinforced transport painted a grim picture of Corbin's intent. He was a cornered animal, and he was fighting dirty. "We're almost there." The driver, a former Special Forces operative named Miller, no relation to the informant Miller, yelled over the din. His hands were a blur on the steering wheel, his focus unwavering. "They're trying to push us into the old market district. Tighter streets." "Hold tight," Mac commanded, expertly returning fire through a specialized gun port in the rear, creating just enough deterrent to keep their pursuers from closing in completely. "Leo, stay low. This is going to get rough." Leo, despite the adrenaline coursing through him, felt a strange sense of calm. This was the fire he knew, the kind of chaos he'd trained for. But this time, he wasn't fighting for a distant cause. He was fighting for the truth, for Bravo, and for justice. He thought of Bravo, hopefully safe on Clara's farm, and a fierce resolve hardened his gaze. He would get to that studio. He would tell their story. The SUV finally screeched to a halt in front of a modern, glass-fronted building. The news studio, uniformed security guards, alerted by Rebecca Chen, were already on high alert, creating a cordon. Mac and his team moved like a well-oiled machine, exiting the vehicle, weapons ready, scanning for threats. "Go." "Leo, go," Mac ordered, pushing him towards the entrance. "We'll cover you." Leo sprinted inside. the echoes of gunfire and shouting fading behind him as heavy doors hissed shut. He was immediately met by Rebecca Chen, her face grim but her eyes alight with fierce determination. She quickly ushered him into a secure green room. Away from the chaos, "You made it," she breathed, her relief palpable. "Just in time. We're on air in 5 minutes. Are you ready?" Leo took a deep breath, adjusting his posture. Ready. The studio was a whirlwind of activity. Technicians moved silently, adjusting lights and cameras. A well-known anchor, Sarah's colleague, sat at a sleek desk, looking composed. Leo was ushered into a chair opposite the anchor, a microphone clipped to his lapel. The heat of the studio lights was intense, but it paled in comparison to the fire in his gut. As the countdown began, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the familiar red light above the camera illuminated, and the anchor began, her voice calm and authoritative. "Good morning, viewers. Today, we bring you a story that will shake the foundations of our trust in authority, a tale of courage, corruption, and the unbreakable bond between a soldier and his K-9 partner. For years, Corporal Leo Maxwell lived with the agonizing belief that his decorated K-9 Bravo was killed in action. Today, we reveal the shocking truth: Bravo was deliberately abandoned by a decorated military officer, Sergeant Miles Corbin, to silence him as a witness to an illicit arms trade. The anchor then introduced Leo. His face appearing on screens across the nation, he spoke calmly, methodically, narrating the harrowing tale. He described the ambush, the whistle, Bravo's agonizing choice, and his own subsequent injury, and the false report of Bravo's death. He then detailed his chance encounter with Sergeant Rex at the shelter, the miraculous recognition, and the slow, agonizing realization of Corbin's monstrous betrayal. He presented the initial evidence the veterinary technicians overlooked. Note: Bravo's official K-9 record showing fabricated aggression, and the discrepancies in mission logs he and Miller had uncovered. He then revealed the core of the flash drive's contents: irrefutable digital evidence, financial transactions linking Corbin to shell corporations and offshore accounts, encrypted communication logs with Elias Thorne, the known arms dealer, specific dates and times of clandestine meetings coinciding with unexplained military detours and excess fuel consumption. As Leo spoke, the screen behind him displayed compelling visual aids charts outlining Corbin's illicit financial gains, redacted logs highlighting suspicious activities, and most powerfully, before and after photos of Bravo, the vibrant K-9 hero, the desolate shelter dog, and finally, the radiant, reunited partner. Mid-interview, Rebecca Chen herself joined, her presence adding significant weight. She explained the meticulous process of verification, detailing how every piece of evidence had been cross-referenced and corroborated. "This is not merely circumstantial," she stated, her voice sharp and precise. "This is a criminal enterprise operating under the cloak of military service. Sergeant Corbin abused his position, betrayed his oath, and deliberately endangered his own soldiers and K-9s for personal profit." She then dropped a bombshell. "We also have direct testimony from a former comrade of Corporal Maxwell's, who wishes to remain anonymous for his safety, but whose detailed account corroborates every claim, including a chilling confession from Corbin's own lips about silencing the K-9 witness." The mention of Miller's direct testimony added an undeniable layer of credibility, sending shockwaves through the broadcast. The story went viral. Social media exploded with the hashtag #SoxJusticeForBravo, and expose Corbyn. Petitions demanding a full military investigation garnered millions of signatures within hours. Public outrage was swift and ferocious. Corbyn, who had likely been watching the broadcast in stunned horror, suddenly found his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. The military, initially slow to react, was now under immense public and political pressure. The Pentagon released a terse statement acknowledging the allegations and announcing an immediate, comprehensive investigation into Sergeant Miles Corbyn and the associated claims. The FBI also confirmed they were launching a parallel criminal probe into the alleged arms dealing. The interview continued, with Leo answering questions about Bravo's resilience, the depth of their bond, and his unwavering belief in the dog's innocence. He spoke not with anger, but with a quiet dignity, his emotions raw but controlled. He articulated the profound injustice, the betrayal of trust, and the symbolic importance of Bravo's story for all silent heroes. Then, in a powerful, unscripted moment, Leo asked for a live video link to the farm where Bravo was staying. Sarah, who had reached Clara's farm safely and was watching the broadcast, immediately facilitated the call. On the large screen behind Leo, Bravo appeared, the majestic German shepherd, looking vibrant and playful, was running in an open field, chasing a thrown ball. Clara, the canine handler, appeared beside him, smiling. "This," Leo said, his voice thick with emotion, pointing to the screen, "is Bravo, my partner. The dog they said was dead. The dog they tried to discredit. He is alive. He is a hero, and he is here to bear witness," as if on cue. "Bravo!" Seeing Leo's face on a small monitor Clara held up, stopped mid-stride. His ears perked up, and he let out a sharp, joyful bark, then began to whine, pressing against the screen as if trying to reach his human. It was a live, unscripted moment of pure, unadulterated canine love and recognition, a powerful counterpoint to the corruption and betrayal that had dominated the broadcast. The sight brought tears to the eyes of the anchor, the studio crew, and countless viewers across the nation. The image of the loyal canine full of life and love, alongside Leo's powerful testimony, became the defining image of the breaking scandal. Miles Corbyn, once a decorated officer, was now exposed as a criminal, a coward, and a betrayer. The trial of truth had just begun, and its verdict was already being delivered in the hearts and minds of millions. The immediate aftermath of the exposé was a whirlwind of media frenzy and official action. Miles Corbyn, stripped of his rank and authority, was swiftly apprehended by military police and federal agents. The images of his defiant, then stunned, face as he was led away in handcuffs flashed across every news channel, a stark contrast to the heroic persona he had meticulously cultivated for years. The initial public outrage solidified into a collective demand for swift and unyielding justice. Leo Maxwell, no longer just a quiet veteran, found himself at the epicenter of a national conversation. He was hailed as a hero, not for combat, but for his unwavering pursuit of truth and his unbreakable bond with Bravo. Interviews piled up, from morning shows to primetime news, each one amplifying the story of betrayal and redemption. He spoke with quiet conviction, his focus always returning to Bravo, to the injustice he had suffered, and to the systemic corruption that allowed such acts to flourish. The military, desperate to salvage its reputation, announced a full, transparent court-martial for Miles Corbyn, alongside a comprehensive internal review of all humanitarian aid missions under his command. The FBI launched a full-scale criminal investigation into the arms smuggling operation, issuing warrants for Elias Thorne and other known associates. The climactic trial unfolded over several weeks, drawing unprecedented public attention. The courtroom was packed, a tangible buzz of anticipation filling the air. Major news networks provided live coverage, and legal analysts dissected every piece of testimony. The prosecution, spearheaded by a brilliant, no-nonsense military prosecutor, presented a mountain of irrefutable evidence. Sergeant Miller, protected by a robust witness protection program, was the first bombshell. He testified via secure video link. His face obscured, but his voice clear and resolute. He recounted the clandestine meetings, the suspicious cargo, Corbin's frantic efforts to silence Bravo, and the chilling detail of Corbin's direct order to handle the K-9 after the ambush. His digital evidence, the flash drive, was presented to the court. A labyrinth of financial transactions, encrypted communications with Thorne, and altered logistical reports. Each data point was a nail in Corbin's coffin. The prosecution also called former soldiers who, encouraged by Leo's courage, came forward with their own unsettling recollections of Corbin's dubious practices. They spoke of inexplicable detours, unauthorized personnel on missions, and Corbin's unusual secrecy surrounding certain operations. Their cumulative testimony painted a picture of a commander systematically abusing his authority for illicit gain. But the most powerful testimony came from Leo Maxwell himself. He stood tall, his voice steady, as he recounted the ambush, the years of guilt, and the miraculous reunion with Bravo. He described Bravo's profound despair at the shelter and the agonizing process of remembering the truth. He spoke not of anger, but of the sacred trust between a soldier and his K-9, a trust that Corbin had callously desecrated. Then came the emotional climax of the trial. Against strict courtroom protocol, and only after intense lobbying by Rebecca Chen and a public outcry. The judge made an extraordinary allowance. Bravo was brought into the courtroom. The majestic German Shepherd entered with a military K-9 handler, his posture regal, his eyes intelligent and calm, a collective gasp. Then a wave of hushed whispers rippled through the courtroom. Bravo, in his restored K-9 vest, walked directly to Leo, who was seated at the witness stand. He nuzzled Leo's hand, then rested his head on Leo's lap, his eyes fixed on him with unwavering loyalty. It was a silent, powerful testament to their bond, a living refutation of Corbin's lies. The prosecution then played a recording, a snippet of the live news interview where Bravo, seeing Leo's face on the screen, had barked joyously and frantically tried to reach him. "This," the prosecutor declared, his voice ringing through the court, "is the unpredictable aggression Sergeant Corbin claimed. This is the unfit for service K-9 he tried to discard." Corbin, who had maintained a facade of defiant arrogance throughout the trial, began to crack. His face, once impassive, contorted with thinly veiled rage and fear. He attempted to dismiss Leo's testimony as emotional fantasy and Miller's as fabricated revenge. But the overwhelming evidence, coupled with Bravo's silent, powerful presence, rendered his denials hollow. The defense's case crumbled under the weight of the undeniable truth. They tried to paint Leo as traumatized and unreliable, and Miller as a disgruntled ex-soldier seeking revenge. They argued that a dog's emotions could not be considered evidence, but the sheer volume of corroborating testimony and hard data was insurmountable. After days of intense deliberation, The verdict came down. The courtroom held its breath as the foreperson read the charges. On the charge of dereliction of duty, knowingly abandoning a K-9 partner in a combat zone, we find the defendant, Miles Corbin, guilty. A collective gasp. Then a surge of murmurs swept through the room. Leo closed his eyes, a profound wave of relief washing over him. Bravo. Sensing his emotion, nudged his hand. On the charge of corruption and illicit arms trafficking, we find the defendant, Miles Corbin, guilty. More charges followed: conspiracy to obstruct justice, fabrication of military records, and attempted murder related to the ambush on Leo. For each, the verdict was the same: guilty. The room erupted in a mix of cheers and quiet sobs of relief. Corbin stood rigid, his face a mask of furious disbelief, then a chilling resignation as the gavel slammed down, sealing his fate. Justice, long delayed, was finally unleashed. The conviction of Miles Corbin sent shockwaves through the military and beyond. It was a powerful message that no one, regardless of rank or reputation, was above the law. The intertwined story of Leo and Bravo became a symbol of truth's triumph over deception, of loyalty's enduring power, and the unwavering fight for what is right. Outside the courthouse, a jubilant crowd cheered for Leo and Bravo. Rebecca Chen, standing beside them, delivered a live report, her voice resonating with victory. Today, she announced, justice was served, not just for Corporal Leo Maxwell and Sergeant Bravo, but for every soldier, every K-9 and every citizen who believes in integrity and accountability. This verdict is a testament to the power of truth, and a reminder that even the most deeply buried secrets will eventually come to light. Leo, holding Bravo close, looked into the dog's soft, trusting eyes. The years of suffering, the journey through despair, the bitter fight for truth, it had all led to this moment. Bravo, his name now synonymous with courage and loyalty, was finally vindicated. His record was cleared, his honor restored. And for Leo, the crushing weight of guilt had finally been lifted, replaced by a profound sense of peace. The battle was won. The aftermath of Miles Corbin's conviction was a profound release, a collective sigh of relief that rippled through the nation. For Leo Maxwell, it was more personal, a visceral shedding of the heavy cloak of guilt and grief he had carried for years. With Corbin behind bars, the truth finally revealed, and Bravo's honor fully restored, a new chapter, one filled with the promise of peace and genuine happiness, was ready to begin. The first order of business was to officially clear Bravo's name. The military, in an unprecedented move, formally rescinded all false records pertaining to Sergeant Rex. Bravo's K-9 service record was updated, highlighting his exceptional bravery and loyalty, acknowledging his status as a true hero. He was even symbolically reinstated. His K-9 medal represented to him in a small, private ceremony at the shelter. It wasn't a grand, public affair, but it was deeply meaningful. Sarah, her eyes shining with tears, pinned the polished medal back onto Bravo's newly cleaned K-9 vest. Leo knelt beside him, stroking his head as Bravo, sensing the gravity of the moment, sat proudly, his tail giving slow, dignified thumps against the floor. Clara, the K-9 handler who had sheltered Bravo, was there, as were Mac and a few of Leo's other trusted comrades. It was a reunion of loyal souls, a testament to the bonds forged in adversity. "Sergeant Bravo," Sarah announced, her voice thick with emotion, "your name is cleared, your honor restored. You are truly a hero, and a testament to unwavering loyalty. Bravo, as if understanding every word, looked from Sarah to Leo, then back to the metal, a soft whine escaping him. He nudged Leo's hand, his gaze filled with pure devotion. For Leo, this moment was the real closure, the true end to years of silent suffering. The next, and most anticipated, step was Bravo's adoption. There was no question. Leo, now his legal guardian, finalized the paperwork that would officially bring Bravo home. The shelter staff, who had witnessed Bravo's transformation from a broken ghost to a vibrant, happy dog, celebrated with genuine joy. They knew Bravo deserved this second chance, and Leo was the only one who could give it to him. The shelter, in a heartwarming gesture, organized a small adoption ceremony, more for their own sense of completion than for public spectacle. Local news crews, still following the story, captured the emotional scene. Bravo, no longer pressing against kennel bars, walked freely beside Leo, his head held high. He accepted gentle pats from Sarah and Mark, even offering a happy bark to the cameras. His eyes, once vacant and haunted, now shone with pure, unadulterated joy and contentment, forever brightened by his reunion with Leo. Leo, holding Bravo's leash, spoke briefly to the press, his voice filled with gratitude. Bravo isn't just a dog, he said, his hand resting on Bravo's head. He's family. He's a hero. And he's a living reminder that truth, loyalty, and compassion will always win. He found me in the darkest time, and now we're finally home. Their actual home was Leo's small, comfortable house, which had undergone a transformation of its own, no longer just a bachelor pad. It was now filled with dog beds, an overflowing toy basket, and the comforting scent of a happy canine. Bravo explored every corner with curiosity, sniffing out new scents, his tail wagging excitedly. He discovered the sofa, a plush haven where he immediately curled up, letting out a contented sigh. Leo watched him, a lump forming in his throat. This was it. The peace he'd longed for, the companion he'd lost, finally by his side. Life settled into a rhythm of healing and rediscovery. Leo, no longer consumed by his investigation or the constant threat of danger, found a new kind of purpose. He volunteered occasionally at the shelter, using his story to advocate for other traumatized canines and shelter animals. He joined a support group for veterans, finally opening up about his experiences, the raw honesty of his story inspiring others. He even started sketching again, a hobby he'd abandoned after the war. Finding solace in the quiet artistry, Bravo thrived. His appetite returned with gusto. His sleek coat regained its healthy sheen, and his muscles, once rigid with tension, became fluid and powerful once more. He and Leo embarked on long daily walks, exploring local parks and hiking trails. Bravo would bound ahead, then pause, looking back, waiting for Leo, just as he had in their training days. Their bond was stronger than ever, forged in the fires of war and the crucible of betrayal, now tempered by shared peace. The simple moments were the most profound. Bravo sleeping soundly on his dog bed beside Leo's own, a gentle snore filling the quiet night, the playful nudges of his wet nose, demanding attention, the shared silences where no words were needed, only the presence of an unbreakable connection. Bravo wasn't just a dog. He was Leo's anchor, his confidant, his silent witness to every new day. Leo even started to mend some of the bridges he'd burned in his self-imposed isolation. He reconnected with his distant family, sharing the incredible story of Bravo and the journey they had taken. They listened, captivated, and welcomed him back into their lives with open arms. Understanding now the depth of his past struggles, the legal repercussions for Miles Corbin continued. Elias Thorne, the arms dealer, was apprehended in an international sting operation, his network dismantled. The full extent of Corbin's corruption was laid bare, and the money he had stolen was recovered and redirected to programs supporting veterans and K-9 units. It was a tangible victory, a testament to the fact that justice, even if slow, was undeniably powerful. Bravo, the K-9 dog at the shelter who had cried when he saw the man, had not only found his way home, but had inadvertently unleashed a wave of justice and redemption. His story served as a powerful reminder that heroism comes in many forms, that loyalty transcends species, and that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest, most heartfelt cry for help. Their shared ordeal had led them to a deeper, more meaningful connection, a life redeemed, and a future brighter than either of them could have ever imagined. Life for Leo Maxwell and Bravo settled into a rhythm of profound peace, a stark contrast to the turbulent years that had defined their past. The clamor of the trial had faded, the media circus had moved on, and Miles Corbin's name was now synonymous with disgrace, forever etched in the annals of military corruption. Leo's small house, once a quiet retreat from a haunted past, was now a vibrant home, filled with the comforting presence of his loyal K-9. Their days began with the gentle thud of Bravo's tail against the floor, a soft whimper of anticipation as Leo stirred from sleep. Morning walks became a ritual, long, meandering journeys through local parks and winding forest trails. Bravo would bound ahead, his powerful legs effortlessly eating up the ground, then pause. Turning back to ensure Leo was following, his ears would swivel, catching every scent, every rustle in the undergrowth, his instincts still sharp, but now directed purely towards the joy of exploration and the unwavering protection of his human. Leo, in turn, found a deep meditative calm in these walks, the steady rhythm of his footsteps mirroring the newfound steadiness in his soul. They spent countless hours simply being in each other's presence. Bravo would lie at Leo's feet while he read, his soft snores a comforting backdrop. He'd nudge Leo's hand for a scratch behind the ears, his intelligent eyes conveying volumes of unspoken gratitude and affection. Leo would often find himself simply watching Bravo, marveling at the sheer resilience embodied in this magnificent creature. Bravo. The K-9, they said, was unfit and aggressive, was now the epitome of loyalty and gentle companionship. His transformation was a constant, living testament to the power of love and redemption. Leo had begun to fully embrace his renewed connection with the world. He continued to volunteer at the local animal shelter, advocating tirelessly for other K-9s and shelter animals. His story, and Bravo's, had become an inspiration, drawing attention to the plight of countless animals waiting for their second chance. He shared his experiences with genuine passion, urging people to see beyond labels, to recognize the potential for healing and the profound impact of compassion. He often brought Bravo with him, the dog's gentle demeanor and incredible story serving as a powerful magnet for adopters and donors. His involvement with a veterans support group deepened. He found solace in sharing his journey with others who carried their own invisible wounds. He spoke of the suffocating weight of unaddressed trauma, the deceptive lure of isolation, and the transformative power of confronting the truth. His raw honesty, particularly about the guilt he'd carried regarding Bravo, resonated deeply, helping others articulate their own unspoken burdens. He discovered that by healing Bravo, he had inadvertently healed himself, and in sharing their story, he was helping others find their own paths to recovery. Leo also rediscovered his passion for art. He started with simple sketches of Bravo, capturing his various moods, playful, serene, alert. Soon, his art expanded to landscapes, capturing the quiet beauty of the world around him, a beauty he felt he was truly seeing again for the first time in years. His work began to gain recognition, first locally, then in small galleries. It was a peaceful, fulfilling pursuit, a creative outlet for the emotions he had so long suppressed. The network of support that had rallied around them remained steadfast. Sarah, the shelter manager, became a close friend, a quiet confidant who understood the unique bond between Leo and Bravo, Mac and his team. The silent guardians who had protected Leo remained in contact, their camaraderie a comforting reminder of the loyalty that transcended military service. They would occasionally meet for quiet dinners, sharing stories, forever bound by the shared experience of fighting for justice. The legal fallout from Corbin's case continued to ripple through the military. The investigations into systemic corruption led to further arrests and reforms, shining a harsh light on illicit practices that had festered in the shadows. The money recovered from Corbin's vast network of illicit arms dealing was channeled into new programs designed to support injured veterans and improve the care and training of military K-9s. A direct and lasting legacy of Bravo's quiet suffering and subsequent triumph. Bravo's story, the K-9 dog who cried at the shelter, became an enduring legend. It was told in classrooms, featured in documentaries, and became a symbol of animal intelligence, resilience, and the power of loyalty. He wasn't just a dog. He was a living testament to the truth that hidden injustices can be brought to light, and that even the most seemingly insignificant lives hold immense value and the capacity for profound impact. The final scene of their story, on any given day, was one of simple, quiet contentment. Leo sitting in his favorite armchair, a book open on his lap, the soft glow of a reading lamp casting a warm circle around him. And there, beside him, on his own plush dog bed, or sometimes, with a gentle nudge, his head resting on Leo's lap, was Bravo. His breathing was deep and even, a picture of perfect tranquility. His eyes would occasionally open, meet Leo's gaze for a moment, a silent affirmation of their enduring connection, then drift closed again. The physical scars on Leo's arm remained, faded but still visible, a permanent reminder of the past. But the invisible scars, the ones on his heart and soul, had largely healed. He no longer felt the oppressive weight of guilt, nor the gnawing ache of loss. Bravo, by his side, was tangible proof that promises could be kept, that justice could prevail, and that even after profound darkness, there could be a bright, peaceful dawn. Their journey had been fraught with peril, heartbreak, and unexpected twists. But through it all, the unwavering loyalty of a K-9, a single act of desperate crying, had set in motion a chain of events that not only brought a corrupt officer to justice, but also redeemed a broken soldier and restored honor to a silent hero. The echo of Bravo's loyalty would forever resonate, a testament to the enduring power of true companionship.